and we'll give you that address at the end as well. We could put that in the chat. So again, my name is Dr. Jamie Rotnofsky. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been in the field for over 30 years. And I have a vast background, which I won't get into, but I really believe in the idea of prevention and positive self-care. And that's why this topic is so important to many folks as well. So again, I welcome you. I hope you'll get a lot from the webinar. We're going to use the chat feature. We'll do the best we can. As if I have time, I will pause and try to answer questions all along. However, you could always write down your questions and save them for the end as well. So, and we could answer those live, meaning you could chat those questions, or you could just raise your hand and ask the question out loud. So again, this is geared for, general knowledge and education. Some information you will already be familiar with. There'll be a reminder, and some folks will be hearing this for the first time. So it'll be interesting to see what you gain. And also remember, you are experts on yourself. So you will have a lot to share later on, especially about what works for you and what hasn't worked for you, and maybe some barriers that you have in talking about positive self-care. So again, the topic is understanding and managing stress, positive self-care for our times. And the reason, obviously, we chose that title is in the midst of not only everyday lives that are stressful, the impact of COVID and stresses related to that. The world has shifted and changed, obviously. And so it's affected us. It affected family members, if you have children, family, friends. Especially some folks are, maybe finally making connections, but there's been a lot of isolation as well, where people are trying to protect themselves. So positive self-care was isolating, which kind of goes against most of our nature to interact with others and have that social connection. So again, we're going to talk about in general stress management. So you're going to apply it to your lives in any way you see fit. But for now, why don't we start off by asking the question, what is some stress in your life now? Maybe some areas of stress. If you want to type those in the chat, what might be causing you stress right now? And someone already put in the idea of getting overwhelmed and feeling paralyzed. So stress could really impact us in so many different ways. But some ways stress could also lead to anxiety, right? So there's this inverse U that they talk about where a certain level of stress helps our adrenaline get kicked in, and we might be at peak performance when we have a certain level, just enough a little stress, right? So that's positive stress, right? Like even, presenting today, I always get a little anxious before I present, but that works for me, kind of gets me up and awake. But if it becomes too much stress, the opposite could happen, where I have difficulty thinking or focusing, or I might get so anxious that I can't speak, or I might stutter, or things of that nature, right? So a certain level of stress is good, but too much stress could really push us and make us feel paralyzed, that we feel like we can't function, that we literally want to shut down. And also when we are stressed, we do have that high level of anxiety. And because of that, we're going to talk about in a moment, it kicks in a hormonal response, and then we don't actually think as clearly, and we have difficulty making decisions. And so again, it really does have an impact on our day-to-day. And just even getting through the day, because now we have less resources because maybe we're stuck in this stress and anxiety. So again, people are attending and talking about the stress they're dealing with, health issues, parenting issues, caregiver issues, working with children, grief and loss, what's going on in the world, relationships, work, school, right? All those things could be stressful. And sometimes those things could be stressful all at once. So even when we have that much stress going on, we're going to talk about, we could still find ways of coping in spite of that. So the goal of today is to not get rid of all the stress, because some things we can't, and some things we can, and when we can, we should. But really the goal of today is just to develop some ways of coping or reinforcing some coping skills, things that you have used in the past, and maybe thinking about some new ways of coping to help us get through these tough times, to help us deal with our stress. Okay. And thank you for using the chat feature to talk about what is your stress is now, feeling overwhelmed, financial burdens. Again, feeling like this, a lot of times people feel like there's no time for self-care, right? Because you're so busy taking care of so many other people's needs. Let's move to the next slide. So what's the goal of today? I'm going to talk about stress, the sources of stress, which we just did. Stresses could come from anywhere. Sometimes stress actually comes internally, meaning that the way I think, how I'm processing something, I could create my own stress by my negative thoughts, right? Doom and gloom, right? So sometimes it's internal, and sometimes stress is external, meaning things are happening outside my control. If if I have a sick parent or a sick spouse, or work is becoming stressful, high workload, those are things that might be beyond my control. That could cause stress, and that's beyond my control. But all I could do is, what can I do with that? How could I cope in spite of this stress? Sometimes it's communication, letting people know that I need help, right? Whatever that might mean, if it's at work or at home, getting help. Sometimes it's making sure I take those breaks for myself, right? And also being aware of what I'm thinking, right? So being aware of our thoughts is a very good sign of positive well-being. Even if our thoughts are negative, we need to check in and know what those thoughts are. Okay. So that's how we grab control of what's going on. Okay, this is what I'm thinking. Now, could I shift my thinking potentially? Could I change my perspective so that I'm not thinking so badly? Or, wow, I am thinking badly right now. I really need to take care of myself. I need a break, right? So having these thoughts, even if they feel like negative thoughts, is information. It's like a barometer of knowing where we're at. And we need to do those self-checks really throughout the day, hopefully, but minimally at the end of the day or the beginning of the day. So usually what most people have control over is the beginning of their day. And so if you can think about a positive activity that you could begin your day with to start your day off right. It's kind of like when you are trying to eat healthy and you make sure your first meal you eat healthy, and you're more likely to eat healthy throughout the day. It's the same thing with your thoughts or what you practice in the morning. So for instance, some people might meditate. Some people might do mantras or pray. Some people, again, there's all different things. Why don't you type in there now some things that you might do or have done or think about, you've thought about doing in the morning to start your day in a positive way, starting off having less stress and thinking about optimism and thinking about something that maybe that you feel grateful about. Some people use a grateful, optimistic journal, documenting things they're grateful for, naming 3 things, or at the end of the day, 3 things that you feel good about that happened, right? So prayer, no news in the morning, very good. Prayer and meditate, very good. Listening to music, walking a dog, meditate, Bible, yoga, excellent. Workout, yes, exercise, very good. Organizing your day, making sure you're starting off with positive thoughts, nature, all right, excellent. So again, please pay attention to what other people are writing, because you might get some other ideas of ways to start out your day. Great. I see a lot of similar things here, but that's great. So pay attention to the chat if you can too. You could actually create a list. And actually, I do encourage you, if you're able to take notes if you'd like, so that it is good to listen, or you can listen to this again, but taking notes of something you want to put into action, because at the end of this, that will be the question I'm going to ask you. What are you going to do next? How are you going to take this forward, what you learned today? So again, it's from your notes, whatever works for you. So it might be taking ideas from other people about what works for them, right? So again, you could get as much out of this as possible by taking those notes and taking this forward. Because a lot of times we kind of get excited when we attend something, we get motivated, and we know what happens afterwards, right? We go right back to our lives, and that might go to the wayside. So what's really hard, this is the hard part, is, how do you take this forward? How do you take those action steps so that it actually becomes a real plan and becomes meaningful and integrated into your life in some way, right? It's like anything else we start out doing, if it's exercise or weight management. I mean, we all have these thoughts of what we want, but getting there is really hard. That could be the struggle. That's why wellness coaches, that's kind of the work that they do. And just so you know, I am a national certified wellness coach. And so part of what coaching does, and this is what you need to do for yourself, is self-coaching. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do by taking action, documenting things that you're hearing today that you might take forward. It could be 1 or 2 things. It doesn't have to be all of this. Okay, great. So again, we want to identify what's stressful for us. And then we're going to talk about stress management techniques. Why are they important? We're going to talk about. So, why you should pay attention to this subject matter. And what are you going to do? How are you going to manage your stress going forward? Next slide, please. So we are going to talk about how to take care of our health and well-being. This is all about prevention. Even if I have a health issue right now, if I'm depressed, if I'm stressed, that doesn't mean that I can't take care of my health and well-being. It's even more important that I take care of my health and well-being. We all have different things that we're dealing with. And, I'm not going to have people say what those are, but we all are dealing with different things in our lives right now, right? But in spite of that, again, we're going to take care of our health and well-being. We still can make the time for that if we're able to, even if it's 3 minutes. Now, who couldn't take out 3 minutes of your day to do something positive? You already talked about early on, we chatted what we could do in the morning. That could do that for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever time you could grab. And maybe in the middle of the day, maybe at the end of the day. So maybe even 10 minutes a day, you could break it up in 3-minute sections. You could do it in any way that works for your lifestyle and for what you're dealing with. So we can take control of our health and well-being. Absolutely. I think we could all give up 10 minutes a day for that, right? And by the way, when I do these webinars, I mean, what's good for me is I'm reinforcing this for myself, right? I'm listening to it, I'm researching it, and it helps reinforce what I need to do. And so what are the things you could do in your life? Think about that to reinforce this positive thing. How do you track it for yourself to make sure you stay on track of taking care of your health and well-being? Next slide. Okay, so this is an app. I'm not going to go through the app. I'm just going to tell you what it is. And I probably talk about this app every webinar. I really like this. It's really easy. You can't get on the computer, apparently. It's only a tablet or your phone. It's free. It's called Stop, Breathe, and Think. What's nice about the app is it takes you through various meditations. You could choose it, and there's ones for 3 minutes and 5 minutes. It also gives some education on there, and you could track your progress. So it's a pretty cool app. You don't have to use an app to do that. And so we're going to do it together right now. We're going to practice a brief breathing exercise, and we're going to center ourselves. And many of you probably already know how to do this. Many of you probably more expert than I, but I'm going to take you through it right now. Okay. All right. So first, the first step is try to get your body relaxed in your chair and sit back and take a deep breath to your own comfort level. Take a few deep breaths. And just focus on your breath. And as I breathe, I'm paying attention to my body. I feel I'm a little congested, right? I'm checking in with my body where I'm at, and that's okay. Still take a deep breath. And I'm going to talk slower, because when I talk slower, for myself and for others listening, it has a calming effect. So it's good to know sometimes we just need to slow things down. Take another deep breath. And if you're so inclined, some people shut their eyes. You're welcome to do that. This way you're blocking out any distractions. And as you take a deep breath, if any thoughts enter your mind, feel free to let them go for the moment. And just focus on your breath. As you feel yourself coming into your body, being present, feeling yourself sitting in the chair, being supported by the chair, feeling your feet firmly on the ground, feeling the floor beneath your feet, feeling the earth under your feet, and grounding yourself as you take a deep breath. And feel your body relaxing. Do a little check-in. If you feel a little kink, you can move your shoulders around and try to relax your body. Do what feels comfortable for you. If it's reaching your arms up in the air, to reach out to the universe, to grab some positive energy, whatever works for you, and to come back to your resting state. Rest your arms by your side and take a deep breath. And when you feel ready, just slowly come back and join us. You could open your eyes when you feel ready to. And if you could just take a moment, and if you feel you'd like to just chat in how that little exercise, if that had any impact on you. What are you feeling right now? And if you'd like to type that in, that would be great. You could use the chat feature for that. And thank you for doing this with me. I might have gotten people to relax. I don't see any chat. All right, good. A reset, good. Exactly. When we do this, we actually reset our body, our physiology. It's very powerful by just taking that moment to feel calm, refreshed. It doesn't take long to make a change, feeling calm. Exactly. And I don't know, I didn't time it, Juan, but what do you think? That was 3 minutes maybe? Yeah. Less busy, more peaceful. Excellent. So this is something you could do every day. And look, I know this better than most, and I know sometimes I don't. I forget to do that. But sometimes, especially when I'm feeling anxious, like when I do a deep breath, I realize like I really wasn't, we hold our breath. It's the opposite of relax. We actually hold our breath when we're feeling overwhelmed and anxious. So that deep breathing, letting ourselves breathe, opening up our lungs, we need that. We need to breathe, and we need to breathe well, right? Like I said, even though I am congested, I feel more relaxed, right? Great. I'm so grateful that you did that with me. I appreciate that. So again, you could download the app that will give the voice to what I did, or you could do it yourself. Whatever works for you. Pick and choose, right? All right, so stop, breathe, and think, or just practice on your own. All right, next slide. Thanks for being present with me. And also, in doing that, we really are present for ourselves. That's it raises consciousness, right? Even though we're letting go, we're actually raising our consciousness to be present in our body. Again, when we have stress and anxiety, the first thing we do is we abandon ourselves, actually, because we're caught up in this loop. And then that loop could lead to negative thoughts. So letting go of that, just reset, right? Reset, whoop, wakes me up out of that, right? So important. So when we do that, we're present for ourselves first. Then I can be present for others. So right now, not only am I present for myself by doing that exercise, I can be present for you and connect with you, even through Zoom. And this works for anyone when you're working, just talking with family and friends, being really present, right? Really listening. That's how you get there. So it's good for you, and it's good for those that you're connecting with or wanting to make a connection with. So when I was doing therapy with folks, sometimes people would come in so anxious. I would do this little exercise with them so that we could recenter and so that we could have a productive conversation. Because when we're that anxious, it's really hard to make connections. So I took the temperature for them. I could sense the barometer of the high stress level. And we know that when, we know what that looks like in ourselves, and we likely know what it looks like in others, right? So we help reset that. So we could do that for ourselves, and we could do it for family and friends and people that we might work with as well. A little exercise like that goes a long way. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about stress and how, stress, when we feel that adrenaline, it is a protective mechanism. And I want to talk a little bit about more how that's become non-protective because it's overused. anything we do too much tends to be in excess, and then it wants to having a counter negative reaction. But it really is meant to protect ourselves, to be alert to danger. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore, typically, right? So danger would be, there's a vicious dog starting to run after me, and I'm pretty sure the dog's going to bite me. That's stress. And so a fight flight response, we're going to talk about and show a video in a moment, kicks in. That's to survive. That's healthy. But unfortunately, with all the different stresses we have today, we always think everything's dangerous and our body's acting as if we're in danger all the time. And that's kicking off this bad physiological loop of hormones in our body that shouldn't be kicked off for that reason. So we need to reset from that, which we just did by breathing. And there's other ways of doing that that people mentioned already earlier. We need to reset that because we're having an overactive stress reaction, and it's really counterproductive. The other thing is, of course, is what's stressful to me may not be stressful to you. Each person perceives stress differently, and that's just based on our background and history. So we don't judge someone else's stress level, meaning you're stressed about that. That's not a big deal. Well, who am I to say that for you, right? So again, that's okay. Each of us responds differently to stress. Okay. Some people shut down, right? Some people get agitated, depending on what's going on. Too much stress for anyone, it's going to lead to bad things, right? So we may not be able to control the level of stress, but we can control taking those breaks. Okay. And of course, there's universal stressors that all of us experience in life, like with COVID, what's happened, the stresses associated with that. And of course, grief and loss, someone mentioned, that's very stressful. And having too much to do in a day because we're maybe caring for others, and it's important we do that, but it is stressful. And that could have a negative effect on us, right? As much as we want to care for our loved ones, we do still need to care for ourselves as well. Next slide. So we know there's a mind-body connection. What I think affects the physiology in my body, and what my body feels affects my thoughts. A good example of that is pain. There's physical pain that we could experience from an injury, and there's also psychological pain that we could experience from grief and loss. And those two things interact with each other. So for instance, if I feel a lot of stress, the reaction to the body could be tightening of the muscles, right? I'm not really breathing fully because I'm anxious, so I'm breathing less frequently and less deeply. And so again, that has a physiological response in my body. And we know stress could lead to high blood pressure, right? Heart problems, many things, back pain, right? Stress finds its way in the body somewhere, right? And sometimes people have physical pain from stress. So we know that our emotions and our feelings connect to our body. And also when we have medical issues, connect to our thoughts, right? So it's a mind-body connection. We're whole beings. And so all those things are interconnected. And so again, feeling. So feeling, if we feel helpless or hopeless, if we feel overwhelmed, if we feel we have no control in our lives, right? That leads to that feeling of helplessness. It could lead to feeling negative thoughts. Please, if you do have negative thoughts, please do reach out, especially when they're constant and you can't stop them. Please reach out. That's when we know we need help, when those negative thoughts don't leave us. And negative thoughts could be like things like, I don't want to live anymore. I'm tired of this. I wish I don't wake up in the morning. I just want this pain to end. Please reach out. Those are everyone may have experienced those throughout their life at various points. And when they don't leave, it's please, you need to reach out and get help. Okay. Feeling isolated. And the worst thing in the world is to have these dark thoughts and be isolated and alone. So please do reach out. Okay. Now, so again, be aware of what we're feeling and thinking and the level of the intensity of it. Only you can measure that. You are the expert on you. So do that every day, right? In different ways. Know when it's extreme, when you should reach out for help, and know when it's just high and you need to take action to do something for yourself. You get to choose what that is, what's good for you to help you. And hopefully you're using what we call positive coping techniques, because we all know there's plenty of negative ones that sometimes we all might indulge in, like maybe shopping to feel better. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that as long as we don't spend our rent money, right? Or maybe eating too much or drinking too much. That could, again, go to the negative part of negative coping. So positive coping, that again, even that has to have a balance. Sometimes treating yourself to a nurturing food that you like, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all you did all day long and ate that and then it was unhealthy for you, that wouldn't be good. So it's all about balance. And there's no such thing as having perfect balance. We just work toward getting more balance. Okay. Shopping and eating. Yes. Someone put, yes, shopping and eating could be, again, to the extreme is not good, but sometimes it's okay to indulge a little bit. Okay. All right. Great. Next slide. So again, that's called a downward spiral. When we get in a bad place, I have these negative thoughts, I have these negative things happening to me, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and we could go into this downward spiral into despair. We don't want that to happen. So prevention is doing something, intervening sooner when you're starting to hit that downward spiral. So I'm going to ask you the question, how do you know when you're heading into that downward spiral? What does that look like for you or for others that you work with? Again, I don't want people to feel like they're revealing too much in a very large audience like this, but how do you know when you're starting to head in go back please, a downward spiral? That word's hard for me. Rumination. Keep thinking about the same thing over and over again. Exactly. You can't let it go. That's a good sign you might be going into a downward spiral, right? Changing in your patterns of sleeping and eating, fatigue, yelling, getting moody. Excellent. Good. So you are aware. You know your cues. So you need to pay attention to you. So when you're starting to feel this, like you're feeling frantic or yelling, yes, right? Yes. Difficulty focusing, right? Could we interpret that, the interpreter, please, for está molesto todo el tiempo? We have that in English, please? Ah, yes, being annoyed all the time. Yes. Yeah, everything annoys you. Everyone annoys you, right? I hate people. I don't want to be around people, right? Stress eating, headaches, right? Road rage. No one put that down, but that's very common. Irritability, headaches. Yes, exactly. So these, pay attention when simple things overwhelm me, right? Another thing is when things you used to enjoy, you don't enjoy anymore. That's not good. That's when you know you're not in a good place. So know when you're heading to the downward spiral. The idea is do something sooner so that you don't go down to the deep, dark place. Now, losing interest in things, exactly, and doing things. Just don't even want to do anything, right? Giving up. It's kind of like a temporarily giving up. Now, I will say one thing about this. I've experienced this myself as well as people I've worked with. Sometimes just giving up and just saying, I don't want to do anything and staying in bed for a little bit is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes people just need to grieve and just to feel like crap. Sometimes that's helpful. That it's important to have a place and a voice for that. It's just you don't want to get stuck there. Many years ago, I worked in physical rehab as a rehab psychologist, and I work with a lot of people with various disabilities, new disabilities, and having to cope with that. But they had to go to physical therapy because we want them to get better, right? And I had this person I was working with, and she's like, I just don't want to go today. I don't want to go today. And my job, they send me there to motivate people, right? And I talked to therapists and I work with her, and I said, you know what? Could she not go today? Because she, I got her to promise to go the next day, just to let her feel like crap that day. Let us not do her therapy that day. And that was really effective. She was much better the next day. She was motivated. She was ready to go. So it's just an example. Sometimes it's okay to feel like crap. I guess that's. Sometimes we just need to feel that way. Sometimes you feel like you've been kicked down, and sometimes you just don't want to get up, so to speak. And that's okay. All right. As long as you don't get stuck there. Okay. So we were talking about the downward spiral, but guess what? There's an upward spiral. There's the opposite that's true. So we could create an upward spiral for ourselves. And how do we do that? And these are some examples. How I'm thinking. Negative thoughts is not good. changing my thoughts. Like sometimes things annoy me and I'm annoyed. I'm like, well, how could I turn it into something good? Change my perspective. Optimism. Optimism is huge. We know research shows, and of course it's common sense, people that are optimistic are happier and live longer. How about that for medicine? Just being more optimistic. I'm not saying it's easy, but we can work at it. So instead of looking at something negative, how could I turn it around? How could I look at something positive? Because we know things happen all the time that we don't plan. And that's part of the difficulty that creates stress for us, because we had this thought about how things were going to go, and they don't go that way. And that may stress us out or annoy us or agitate us. So how could I flip that? What just happened? How could I say, well, you know what? That's not going to happen, but I have free time now. I have more time for myself. So flipping something that we may perceive negatively into something positive. So how might we be able to do that? So optimism, again, we have to work at it. That's part of writing that journal. Some people recommendation is writing a journal, or at least thinking the positive thoughts every day of things you could feel good about, things you feel grateful for, is a way of feeling optimistic. Because believe it or not, what we think is what energy we put out in the world, and people feel it, for better or for worse. We know this. So when I'm feeling good and I'm walking around, more people smile at me, maybe I'm smiling at them, right? If I'm walking around and I'm annoyed and irritated and grumpy, I'm going to, that's the energy I'm putting out. I may get that back. You feel that. We feel each other's energy. It just exists in the universe. We all know this, right? So shifting that energy in our body by shifting our thoughts. That's what we're doing, the mind-body connection. Work at that. That creates the upward spiral. Also, the ability to let go. Let go of something that's bothering me. Letting go of the rumination. Letting go of the rumination. That's such a hard word for me. But letting go of obsessing, that obsessive thought cycle that's negative. You know how you do that? Yell to you in your head or out loud, depending on where you are. Stop. Yell stop. You have to stop that cycle and say, I'm not going to think this way. And then you start talking to yourself either out loud or in your head. No, I'm not going to think this way. Stop. And if you're having a hard time stopping the thoughts, an exercise that works really well, because we can't have two thoughts at the same time. It's hard. Let's say you're in your kitchen and you're feeling crappy. You say, okay, I'm going to just talk myself through what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. Okay, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. And you say this in your head or out loud. I'm going to go to the cabinet. I'm going to open the cabinet. I'm going to get a cup. Get the cup out. I'm going to get that. And you just talk yourself into the process, the directions of what it is you're doing. And by doing that, you're letting go of this other thoughts, these other negative thoughts. That's just one example. The idea is controlling your thought process. Or maybe you do the deep breathing exercise and focus on your breath. Anything that could break that downward spiral by doing something positive. That's how we create this upward spiral. Okay. Ability to see that a situation can and will change, finding some optimism, creating a plan. I know sometimes when I feel stuck and overwhelmed, I try to develop a way to manage it better. And sometimes I can come up with a plan, and that helps me feel better that I'm taking control in the ways that I can. And of course, very famous, especially in 12-step programs, is the serenity prayer, right? Letting go of things I cannot control. That's what we're talking about. This people that know the serenity prayer, it's about letting go, accepting the things I cannot change, changing the things I can, and having the wisdom to know the difference, right? Knowing what we can control and knowing what we can't control and accepting that. Okay. All right. Having a positive sense of humor. As I say, laughter is the best medicine. It really is. Some people look at weird things on TikTok because they make them laugh as a distraction. That's called positive distractions. So again, you could also use positive distractions to get out of this negative cycle. Valuing and honoring relationships with others, trying to connect with others, right? Exercise is really good. Whatever you're able to do physically, If it's stretching, if it's running, if it's some type of aerobic exercise, that releases the stress hormone that's going to get rid of it and cleanse yourself. And of course, eating well is very helpful too, because it's the mind-body connection, right? So eating healthy, if I'm eating healthy, I can feel like I'm taking care of myself. I can feel good about that. Think about what can I feel good about right now when I feel like crap? Is there anything I could grab to feel good about? And if I feel like I can't, please again, reach out for help. Reach out for a friend, family, counselor, therapist, hotline. We're going to give those numbers at the end. Reach out for help, because sometimes we get stuck. We just can't get out of our own way. And sometimes we need help to do that. Okay. So again, we want to create that upward spiral. So it's adding positive onto positive. So a good example might be someone that likes to jog, let's say, and they also love music. So they're going to jog and listen to music. And that creates a sense of maybe what we're looking for, a sense of euphoria, the feeling good, right? You know, when you feel euphoria, like they call them peak experiences, you know, we don't have them that often, but we could try to create them. Things like putting together those things that make us feel good is really important. So you need to know, and I encourage you to make a list of things that make you feel good. What are your go-tos that make you feel good? And you should know that list by heart, because when you feel like crap, you don't want to think about it. You may not even be able to think about it straight because you're feeling overwhelmed. Having that list either on your phone, in an app, on a piece of paper, on your fridge, what's your go-to when you're feeling like crap? What's going to help you? You look at that, you're like, okay, pick one of those. What are your go-tos? People talked about them earlier. Exercise, eating well, praying, meditating, whatever works for you, right? All right. So that's really what we're talking about. This slide is about not only the mind-body connection, but what's called the upward spiral of feeling good. We all know the downward spiral really well, don't we? That unfortunately just happens, but we need to work on the upward spiral. All right, next slide. Okay, this, and by the way, if you'd like copies of this, just one, you could put in the chat the MHSA email address. I'm happy to send these PowerPoints to you because there's a lot of good slides in here that you might want to utilize. You're welcome to, or take a picture. By all means, feel free to take a picture. In life coaching, we utilize this life balance wheel. And what it's really cool, it's like a quick assessment that you do of your life in different areas of your life. And so it's basically on a 1 to 10 scale, how you feel about each of these areas. And some areas may not apply to you. You could cross them out. There's even a blank area. You could write in something where you get to rate yourself. Where are you now in your life? So an example might be personal growth. Now, each of us, that means something different too, but that's like personal growth, personal development. How am I enhancing my way of learning more about life? What makes me feel good? You know, how do I feel about my personal growth right now? Am I working on something that makes me feel like I'm evolving, right? Learning a language or whatever that means to you. And you would rate yourself. So a 10 would be like, I'm feeling really super fantastic. Or maybe 5, so, right? And so you could rate these areas of your life. I like, let's do the fun and recreation one, right? Fun and recreation is really important. So let's all rate our fun and recreation. If you'd like to chat in, you could put the number you choose for yourself today. How would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really good? I'm feeling, I make sure I have fun and recreation in my life every day. Or 7, give me your number. 1 would be like, there is none. Or 0, right? There is no fun and recreation in my life. Thank you. People putting in numbers now. Now, what's cool is whatever that number is, it's just where we are today. Please don't feel bad about your number if it's low. Sometimes there's circumstances in our life that this balance gets pushed a different way. So an example, when we're caregiving, right, that we have a lot of caregiving needs, we're caring for someone, other areas need to be sacrificed for that. That's just natural, normal, and hopefully it's temporary, right? So don't feel bad about a low number. It doesn't mean like you're failing or it's your fault. All we're doing is looking where the number is in each of these areas, and then thinking about what of these areas might I want to change. And again, at the end, we talk about developing an action plan. You get to choose if you want to work on one of these areas. So maybe fun and recreation is an area you want to work on, and maybe you're a 4 and you're not happy with the 4. Or maybe say 4 is good for now. But if you're not happy with the 4, what number would you want that to be? You get to circle a new number in a different color. I want to make that a 6. The next question would be, well, what would make that a 6? What would that look like for you? Each of us would put something different. I'm going to go out and bicycle ride. That's going to make it a 6 for me. Once a week. I haven't done it in years. I'm going to get out my bike. So there's steps to this, right? I got to get out my bike. I got to put air on my tires, right? Whatever the case may be. I mean, the steps you're going to have to take to get it ready. And we know that that's part of your action plan. So that may come from, again, how do I get from 4 to 6 for you? You choose. What activity might that be? But remember, there's steps to take to get there. It's not just getting on your bike. It's getting the bike down, finding the bike, dusting it off, putting in the air in the tires, making sure it's safe to ride, right? And then where are you going to go when you get on that bike? Are you going to put the bike in the back of your car? Are you going to take it right at your house? Whatever the case may be. And are you going to go on a bike alone? Do you prefer to bike ride with other people? You know, whatever the case may be. You can combine that with, oh, I'm going to take my bike to the park, to the beach. Now you're combining two things you love. That's all it would take for you to increase that from a 4 to 6 potentially. And that's just one example. Riding my motorcycle, 10. Yeah, I know. That's how I know. It's like it's sitting in the garage. It's covered. It's not going out. It's just, you know, being charged so the battery doesn't die, right? It's not a good sign, right? Very good. So again, you get to choose any of these areas you'd like to work on. And you don't even have to assess all these areas if you don't want to. You could just choose one area that you want to focus on, assess that one area. And do you want to change it? Yes or no? And you come up with a plan. And when is that plan? Not only the plan, but when is that plan going to take place? You need to set some dates, target dates. Setting goals is really important. But if you don't set the right goal, it doesn't happen. So you have to be very tangible and concrete about how that's going to happen. Like we said, getting the bike down, putting the air in the tires. I'm going to go on Wednesday. If it rains, I have a backup plan. And this is where I'm going to take my bike. And I'm going to take my bike out for 15 minutes the first time because I haven't ridden my bike in a while. Okay. I will pause here and see if there's any questions so far. We went through quite a bit of information. But about the life balance wheel, I really love this one. You could just use this. I've had people do this, and then we look at it like, 3 months later, 6 months later, see where they're at. And again, you could also get a buddy who you do this with. And so now you hold each other accountable. That's real helpful, right? A lot of programs that are successful is because there's an accountability. People have to report, right? Okay. Again, we're happy to send you a copy of the PowerPoint. Please just email us. Juan, put it on our email address so we make sure you send you a copy. Again, this is a really good exercise. This is universal. It's been used for years. I've been using this life balance wheel for over 20 years. It's really effective. It's a good way for us it gives an aerial view of where we are, and we're kind of looking at our lives from above and looking, okay, how would I rate that? It gives us an opportunity versus just being in our head and feeling all this stuff, right? Great. And Juan, I think some people are typing in their email addresses to get the copy of the PowerPoint.
Perfect.
Great.
I will try to grab the addresses from here as well, but it would work best if you email the mhsa@ventura.org, but I will do my best. Thank you.
Great. So again, this is all part of stress management in a way, especially when you're not feeling good right now and you're thinking about ways I might feel better. Which of these areas would help my stress management right now? That's why I chose fun and recreation, because I think that's the first thing to go, when we're really busy, right? All right. Any questions? I see some email addresses. Any questions about the life balance wheel at this point? And thank you all for self-rating. And, the range is, from 3 to 10, right? Each of us is different. Let's see, am I missing? Okay, great. All right, we'll move to the next slide. So can't highlight enough. We've been talking about the importance of taking care of yourselves. Why? We already talked about how it affects our physical health, our emotional health, our cognitive well-being. When we're stressed, we don't think well, we make mistakes. And actually, if we're really stressed out, we have more accidents. I hit my head the other day, I wasn't paying attention, stuff like that. We trip and fall, not good, right? Stress impacts our personality. People already talked about that earlier. I should say you chatted about that, talking about how it affects your mood. So it affects your personality. Yeah, agitated, yelling, annoyed, right? Depressed, affects our mood. So we need to take care of it. And by taking care of it, we will feel better and our mood will improve and our personality will improve, right? A lot of times your family and friends will be the first to notice when you're not right too, right? Because they know you really well. If you're normally coping really well and all of a sudden you're acting differently, like, whoa, what's going on? We overreact to things because we feel things more intensely. We're already overwhelmed. And when kind of like it comes out sideways, the stress comes out sideways. And maybe we're getting into more arguments with folks because of it, right? It also affects not only our attitude, but potentially our sleep. Sleeping too much, sleeping too little. That's not good, right? Sleeping too much is kind of a way of hiding out and maybe being depressed. Again, that doing that all the time is not good. Sometimes resting is good because stress does take a toll on its body, and sometimes the body requires more rest. So please, be careful about that. So too much of anything is not good, but not sleeping well. And of course, ongoing stress causes physiological responses to the body, and we could feel burnt out. We could get sick, right? Colds, again, our immune system also gets compromised. It gets weaker, and so we're more likely to catch things. And it can lead to anxiety and depression. And if we may already have anxiety and depression, it will worsen our anxiety and depression. That's not good. Okay. And of course, in extreme cases, when ongoing stress and we're feeling hopeless and helpless can lead to more serious things like major depression, thinking about taking our lives in extreme cases, and also trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. Some stress is traumatic stress, especially stress over time. Over time, things keep happening, could be traumatic when bad things are happening to us, right? And especially if we have a history of trauma, when stress happens, sometimes we feel it more intensely because of the history of our own trauma. And so it's harder for us to cope because of that history, because it triggers things, especially pain. Pain triggers emotions. And if we have a trauma history, emotional pain could trigger that memory of that trauma pain. And we have to separate those things out because sometimes they pile on top of each other, because emotions do not know time. So if something is being triggered now, and either consciously or usually unconsciously, it triggers a memory of pain in the past, that stuff's coming back up. And it's almost like we have to revisit it again. And sometimes we need to process that unresolved trauma. That's what makes this some complicated sometimes. But that's a little above and beyond this topic. That could be a topic in and of itself, of talking about trauma and how to continue to heal from trauma, because it is a lifelong journey, healing from trauma. It never fully goes away, but it gets usually a little bit easier, but it does resurface. And someone talked about grief and loss. That's another example of when we're dealing with the current grief and loss. All our grief and loss, our emotions from past grief and loss get triggered and come back up again. And we have to revisit those things. That's normal, but it can be overwhelming. Okay, next slide. So again, the body connection, mind-body connection, the fight or flight, the stress hormones get kicked in and we're overacting. Our body's overreacting to what's going on, and too many stress hormones cause physical illness. So again, another example of why we need to cope with stress. So that again, the fight flight response is to keep us alive, right? In the caveman days, that's how they stayed alive. And they also got to rest. But now, stress, we're not being chased by a saber-tooth tiger, hopefully, is the day-to-day stuff. And so our body thinks that we're in danger, and so it's overreacting. And so that's all those adrenal glands and hormones being triggered. And that's very unhealthy for us. So those breaks that we talked about, how do you take care of yourself, positive self-care techniques, that's how you create that cave for yourself, right? I know sometimes when people drive, they have to drive far, but they're alone and they listen to their favorite music and they turn into something positive. So again, even something that driving in traffic, how you turn that into something positive. Try to always look at that in your day-to-day activities. Okay. And of course, we all have daily stress and we all may have even chronic stress. So we still could take care of ourselves in spite of those things. Of course, things that we could get rid of stress-wise, that would be good if we have the ability to change it. Sometimes we do not. But if we do, we want to decrease our stress levels as much as possible. Okay, next slide. I think we talked enough about this, but we experience stress physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and behaviorally, right? So again, you all gave great examples earlier about like flying off the handle as a behavior, drinking too much, slamming doors, missing work, losing faith, feeling negative, right? The opposite of optimism. And again, muscle tension, feeling it in our body, mental, slow processing, preoccupation, and emotional, negative mood, irritability, losing hope or faith, cynical. All the things we talked about earlier that you chatted in. That's how we know we're experiencing stress. Knowing that is helpful, right? Because that's how you know to stop that downward spiral. Next slide. All right. So again, it affects every aspect of us. Stress does that. Stress is normal and natural. It's what we're going to do about it. It's up to us. Next slide. And I purposely reinforce things over and over again sometimes, so you hear it more than once. It's purposely designed that way. How do we know if we're having signs of coping difficulty? This is just a slide I put together of different potential symptoms or negative things that might be going on. So if you can't figure it out, if you don't know your own signs and symptoms of when you're going to that downward spiral, these are some things you may or may not feel. And if you're feeling some of these based on a situation, might be fine. But if you feel these all the time or a lot of them, that's when it gets concerning, right? So just in case you're not in touch with what you're feeling, if you don't know your own triggers and when you're not doing well, this is a potential list. I do encourage you to create your own list for you of which things, of some may be on here, some may not be, of when you know you're hitting that downward spiral. Self-awareness is key. Checking in with your emotions is key. Knowing what you're thinking, that is your barometer. You have a natural barometer if you check in with it. No one else will know that better than you, but you have to pay attention. So again, signs of stress, problems in your relationships, arguing, overreactions, hypervigilance, not talking with people, not feeling normal, feeling burned out, feeling overwhelmed, physical pain. Again, even medical issues are stressful, even though you didn't cause them. You know, we have them that stress us out, right? Pain is very stressful. It takes a toll on our body and our mind. Pain definitely has, and then there's psychological pain as well. Lack of energy, having symptoms, headaches, someone mentioned migraines, thoughts of death and dying, that's getting extreme now, right? If you're thinking about that and you can't let go of that thought and it stays with you, please reach out for help. Anxiety, emotional shutdown, again, it's all there. So we're happy to send you the slide. I do think it's good for you to create your own slide for you, so to speak, of what things are cues for you and put them in for yourself so you pay attention. Any questions about that? What is hypervigilance? Like really being paying attention to every little detail of what's going on, paying attention to someone's, you know, what they're thinking, like looking at their face. Oh, you're upset with me, and like being really like trying to control everything. Paying overly attention to everything. That's hypervigilance. Thanks for asking. Any questions about where we are right now? All right, I don't see anything in this slide right now. Okay, let's keep moving on because I want to make sure we leave time for questions. All right, whew, let's take a break. Positive coping. Let's listen to the ocean for a moment. We can turn that off for a second. Go to the next slide if we can. Great. We could take a break. We could do things to feel better. You know, I mean, write down the things that you're thinking about doing today or tomorrow for positive coping. You know, getting to the ocean, listening to the ocean sounds. If you can't get to the ocean, there's plenty of online videos of the ocean like we just showed you. So don't get upset if you can't get somewhere. You may not have enough time, but you could create the visual for yourself in your mind without even looking at it on a computer, right? We could build our own support, right? All these things that you could do to create life balance or get closer to life balance, you have to take action, making sure you get the right sleep, making sure you exercise. Not everyone likes exercise. Don't exercise. You know, if you have a dog, you have no choice. You have to take your dog out. So, you know, and sometimes that helps, right? Even petting your dog is a stress reduction. That's why they have pet therapy. They bring the dogs into different places. When people going through traumatic events, they bring the service dogs. They bring these specially trained dogs to people so they could pet them. Pet therapy in hospitals, in assisted living, just to have a connection to it, to touch, tactile is really important, right? So meditation, talking with others, reaching out, optimistic, all the things we already talked about. I'm just reinforcing it. So what are you going to do? What actions are you going to take? I put that to you. This is, helpful, what I'm talking about, but what's really helpful is what you're going to do about it, if anything. Now, if you don't feel ready to do anything, that's okay too. Save the PowerPoint for when you're ready, because sometimes we're just not ready to do anything. Sometimes we just feel too tired. When you're ready, like the woman I was working with that needed a break from therapy, sometimes you're not ready, and that's okay. Just know that that's the choice you're making for now, but don't let that be a permanent choice. Revisit that, please. Okay, it's all about health and wellness, whatever that means to you. Okay, next slide. But we can make a change. Anyone can make a change. You matter. Bottom line is you matter. And even if you don't feel like you matter, fake it till you make it. Make believe you matter. You have to matter. Take care of yourself. A lot of times we take care of others better than we take care of ourselves. That's very common, especially for people that are caregivers, especially, for women too, that women are trained to always be the caretakers as well. Sometimes there's gender differences in that. I'm so glad when I see males participating in things like this, because quite often the audience is women, and that, which is good, because women tend to be the caregivers in our society, but that's changing, right? We all have stress. So make sure you matter. If you don't, you have to matter to you. You're the only one that can make that change. No one could give it to you. No one could give it to you but you. Yes, is it helpful to have people around you that support that? Yes. To reinforce that? Yes. It's really hard to do this when we're not supported, and actually people pull us to do other things. And we keep saying, yes, we'll do that. Yes, we'll do that. Being able to say no could be one of the most important things that you may get out of today. Setting limits and boundaries with others. As much as we want to say yes all the time, we always, of course, want to help people when we can. Sometimes we're full. I have nothing left to give. I may not like being there, but I have to say that to myself. I have nothing left to give anybody else right now. I'm full. I'm full. I have to say no. That's how I protect myself. That's positive self-care. Being able to say no. Right? So, it's important to set those boundaries and limits, right? Having a support network, if you don't have one, to, developing a support network, whatever that might mean for you. A lot of times this could be family and friends. Some people, they may go to a church or a synagogue and they find positive there, support network there. Sometimes there's groups that just exist, chat rooms, online groups. There's people that go to Weight Watchers. I mean, there's all different ways of getting a support network. That support network might be a bike riding group. If you haven't want to bike ride with a group of people and setting a commitment up, they go every week and you do it. Whatever that is to you, okay? Creating that support network for your health and well-being, for your self-care. Okay. You need to practice positive health and well-being. If you don't practice it, you will not have it. It doesn't happen naturally. For most people, it's something we do every day. It's the last thing we do. We don't even think about it. We're just getting through the day, right? Not enough time in the day, just getting through the day, surviving, right? Sometimes it feels like that. That we could do that for so long without it taking a toll on us, right? Okay, next slide. So know where you are now. That's that life balance wheel, so to speak. Where are you now with your positive self-care, with your stress level, with working towards that upward spiral? Where are you today? And even if it's a number one, you rated it number one overall self-care right now on a 1 to 10 scale. And if it's 1, I'm at a 1. I admit that. Nothing wrong with that. That's where you are. Not a great place to be, but that's where you are, right? So what are you going to do now? Where do you want to go? What's your roadmap? Where do you want to get to? I'm a 1. I want to be a 3. I'm not asking for much. I just want to be a 3, right? What would that look like? And then what are the directions of getting from 1 to 3? If you don't have the directions, you will stay lost. You will not get there. Make those connections. That's your action plan. Next slide. Here's another one. Again, we're not going to go over this, but another way of rating yourself, a life satisfaction scale. Because if we're not satisfied with our lives, probably not too happy, right? Important to work at. Again, happy to send these slides to you. You just rate yourself very simply on a 1 to 7 scale. You could also take a picture of this slide if you'd like. The quality of relationships, feeling close with people, eating habits, your weight, feeling inner peace. Wow, inner peace, right? What does that mean, right? Each of us defines that differently, but that's a big one. Feeling inner peace, right? Feeling good about where I'm at, right? That's inner peace, right? Feeling gratitude. So again, these are things you can rate yourself. Next slide. A lot of tools that you'll have an opportunity to have. So creating that vision for well-being for you. That's what we're talking about. Your self-care vision. Writing it down, thinking about it, creating a vision board, whatever that is, whatever works for you. Journaling, monitoring, putting something in your schedule every day that you do, whatever works for you. If it's every day, every other day, doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's something. What is your vision? So if you were to take a moment right now and just let go and just visualize you're in a different place. You're going to take care of your positive self-care. You're going to take care of yourself. What vision comes to you when I say that? What do you see yourself doing? What vision do you want to create for yourself? If you don't know what that is, I encourage you to take the time. Years ago, I used to practice a lot with people I used to work with. It's called creative visualization. Just visualizing something in the future of what that might look like for you. If you were in a good place, if you have more fun and recreation, whatever that might be for you, whatever area you're choosing to work on, what would that vision look like? Right? Someone seeing themselves at a beach. Right? Good. And I also appreciate people putting in some support networks. So thank you for that, of where to reach out if you're having difficulty coping. Great. Mountaintop. Some might see themselves making a phone call to reach out for help. That might be, that's positive self-care, right? So create these visions for yourself and hopefully you achieve them and then create new ones. We have the ability to do that. Next slide. So again, other examples of stress management techniques or positive caring for yourself, however you want to see it, managing your time well, being out in nature, exercise, going to a spa, music, having a hobby, right? Having fun and recreation, taking a vacation, whatever it is for you, hiking in the woods. Great. Next slide. The more we do this, we do these activities, we're kind of building a cushion for ourselves, almost a protective cushion. So when stress does happen, we're just going to cope better because we're already in a better place. And we also feel like we could take care of ourselves if we have a lot of stress, like we know what to do. So really basics of taking care of yourself. Sleep. Having poor sleep hygiene. We know that people that don't sleep well actually have shorter lifespans. Sleep is crucial. Okay. These are, again, just other examples we've talked about. Having human contact, connection, having a hug, getting a massage, walk, bike, read, enjoy the sunshine. Take care of yourself, please. You're the only one that could do that. Next slide. More of the same here, just the basics. Taking those mental breaks until you can figure out how to develop a plan, just even doing that breathing exercise, whatever works for you. Money could be a burden and stress. We know this, right? So even managing our money is important. That's self-care, managing our money. That's really good self-care. Because if I'm worried about money, if I'm worried about paying bills, I mean, that takes a real big toll. So stress, money management is part of stress management. You may not think of that, but it is, right? Other examples, things we've talked about, finding passion in our lives, finding passion in our lives, things that we really like to do and feel good about. Not very lucky, like doing these webinars, I really enjoy. I'm very passionate about them. You probably could tell. And I'm lucky I get to do this as part of my job. Well, that's great. You know, maybe some of my other pieces of my job are very stressful and maybe I don't like as much, but I could have this piece and I'm going to hang on to that, right? So what are the things that you do? Could even be for work or even when you're caring for someone that you feel good about. So you have moments that you feel good about. Every so often I think of this moment I had. I go back to when I worked in inpatient rehab, and I've also worked with folks that were elderly in the rehab, of course. And I just think about these special moments I've had with people by being present with them and them allowing me to be with them. Just being with folks. And could be very spiritual, and that's part of my job. Sometimes I have those peak experiences in my job. That was really cool. And I think of those moments and I could smile today, when I just reflect. And that's another thing, by the way, we could think of something in the past that made us feel really good, these peak experiences. And even though it happened in the past, if we think about in the moment, the feelings don't know the time, we actually feel good again as if we were in that moment. It's pretty amazing to think so think about things you felt good about and you could actually reflect and have that memory and you will actually feel good and feel better in the moment. Pretty powerful. All right, next slide. Importance of connection, having connections with others, making that time. Okay, next slide. Different resources, again, that are online for different purposes. There are many great apps out there. These are just some, the virtual hope box is for folks that are struggling with maybe having a hard time coping. It was designed by the Veterans Administration. For folks that may have thoughts of suicide safety plan, there's a self-care, it's called Woolbot. It kind of sends you messages if you like that kind of thing. I tried it. Honestly, I didn't like it, but some people do. Next slide. Happify, that's a really good one. Happify is like, again, optimism, feeling happy. And so it's an app that helps you to look at happiness. It reinforces that. That's it. That's a pretty cool one. If you have anxiety, there's self-help anxiety management. And of course, my favorite, Stop, Breathe, and Think for meditation. And also know that there's crisis text lines as well. If anyone's in crisis, there's resources. And the next slide. Wellness Every Day has, that's the site I mentioned that this tape recording will go on. Also has things about suicide prevention, educational materials, other webinars that I've done are on that site. And again, this is not the only site for that, but you could also find resources online. There's a lot of great resources online to help you with your journey. Next slide. And then, of course, if someone's in crisis and having thoughts of wanting to, take their life, if you know someone or you're feeling that way, these are the hotlines. We make sure that people have them every time we do a webinar. And we also have the Ventura County Behavioral Health Crisis and Referral Line. That's the 866 number, and that's local. And so you could also call that number. And if you need help, they'll help you get to the help you need. Next slide. And we have this now in Spanish. And then the last thing is, of course, I'm going to ask that you take a survey, not now. We will send you this link, but you could scan this code if you'd like. That helps us know how this helped you, if at all, and also future webinars. But now, with the 10 minutes remaining, I apologize. It always goes longer than I had planned. Let's see if we have any questions. People are also typing a lot of, thank you so much, typing in some resources for you. Is there any, and I'll let Juan read the questions. I see it's great. I see NAMI's information up there. It's a great resource for family members of people that need support. NAMI Ventura, National Association for Folks with Mental Illness. Okay. So if you have any questions, you could chat them in. If you have any comments, if you just want to put out a positive thought, whatever you like. I am open and flexible. You could chat those in, or if you'd like, you could raise your hand and Juan will let me know you're raising your hand, and you could ask your question out loud if you like. You would just unmute yourself at that point. Okay, Lana, I see your hand.
Thanks. I recently attended a webinar with school counselors who were school counselors for ages kindergarten through high school. And one of the elementary school counselors, which is something that we could think about, becoming a child again, because the school counselor said, if you have an anxious child, get them to be curious about what they are anxious about, because curiosity and anxiety don't mix. They don't fit together. It'll change and reset their brain. So we have to become a child again ourselves and learn to play.
Yes. Thank you. I love that. Yes. Because we lose that for some reason. We definitely lose that as we become older and kind of absorbed in all these things. We forget how to play.
Thank you.
Play is huge. Thank you, Lana. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Again, you could put them in the chat and Juan will highlight them for me, or you could raise your hand. I know I'm not seeing everyone, but hopefully Juan could see if you raise your hand. Juan, any questions?
A Spanish speaker is asking if this type of presentation is available for middle school children. And I see that somebody typed into the chat, United Parents of Camarillo, correct? So maybe reach out to United Parents of Camarillo for that type of support.
Great, thank you. Yes, thank you. I really appreciate some providers being on and offering their resource information. If anyone has any other resource information they'd like to type into the chat, please do so. And we could share those support resources right here, right now. All right, so people are thanking me. Thank you. I'm so glad you could all be here. I'm so glad you took care of yourselves by being here today. And so I'm going to ask you just to think of a positive thought that you want to leave everyone with. If you want to chat that in, and then we'll end with that. We'll have an opportunity to read those. Positive thought. Something you're going to do for yourself. You matter. Be kind. The sun is shining. Love it. Get your sleep. Get some information. Great. Don't give up. We're truly blessed. Take your action. Life is beautiful. Great. You got this. Set your intentions. Smile. You matter. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Be kind and say thank you. The Spanish interpretation, please, for what's up there.
It says here that you can achieve your goals and your dreams.
Be happy. You're not alone. Everyone here has experienced all of these things. You know, certain things are very much universal. Many of us have been in bad places and managed to find our resilience and climb out of them, and with support from others, right? Yeah. So just even connecting together, right, doing this webinar gives us a connection, even via Zoom. You know, we're able to connect with each other. I hope you were able to connect with me. I hope I feel like I've connected to you. I really appreciated your feedback, your involvement. I know an hour and a half is a bit of a long time for a webinar, but there was so much information to present. Take whatever pieces work for you. You know, please do take care of yourselves. You're very welcome. I'm happy I could do this. I really do enjoy it. I thank you for being here. Again, this will be, you'll be getting a follow-up survey. Juan will be sending them out. Appreciate the feedback. Yeah, I appreciate if people want to turn on the cameras just to wave to each other before we end.
I posted a resource for LGBTQ community. It's called the Amador Network of Care. And it's a great PDF that's 28 pages long with tons of resources.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's give ourselves a round of applause for doing this today. Keep going. All right, keep at it. All right. Bye for now, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our interpreters. Very much appreciate you.
Thank you.
Great working with you guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye, Lana.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, all.